Welcome to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry. In every episode, we explore how people from educators and artists to executives and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, rise through adversity, and share the wisdom they've gained along the way. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Marian Kopp, an accomplished international business leader and strategist with more than 3 decades of experience in the wine and consumer goods industry. Marian is currently CEO and Executive Director of Lauffener Vineyards, one of the largest independent wine cooperatives in Germany. His leadership journey has taken him across the globe, from South Africa to California to Germany, building successful wine brands, guiding organizations through transformation, and balancing the timeless traditions of wine with the ever-changing demands of the marketplace. Together, we'll dive into what it means to lead authentically across cultures, build trust in uncertain times, and leave a legacy that blends both tradition and innovation. Marian, welcome to Expressions of Leadership.
Thank you for the invite. It's amazing to be in your show.
So, Marian, you've spent more than 30 years in the wine industry. When you think back to your early days, what first drew you to leadership in this space?
Well, actually, I started right after college. I was interviewing right after college in the early 90s. And I was drawn into the industry through actually advertising for young wine brands that came up in the late 80s, early 90s in the European market. And when I got to know one of the ad agency leaders in university, in a class, I kept contact. And at that time, I was just interested in understanding how marketing for wine works, because I'd never seen big commercials for wine. We had them in Europe quite a bit for sparkling wines, but never for wine. So I thought, okay, what is this? Is this FMCG? Okay, that product wine is a fast-moving consumer good. Yes, on one side. And on the other side, it's more like a discrete product you have with your most intimate friends. You have a glass of wine when you feel comfortable, you want to relax. So the consumer's attitude towards wine can be like seen in a wide window. And it drew me in. I wanted to understand more of the market. And when I was ready, I had my MBA in business, in social studies. I threw out my CV. And I ended up with a large sparkling wine and still wine house in the German market. And that's how I got into it.
And wine carries centuries of culture and identity. How has this shaped your approach to leadership compared to other industries?
Well, wine, number one, you get one harvest a year. It's not like an industrial product that you have a constant stream of supplies. Once a year, we pick a harvest. That's number one. So we have to go with a year of nature. Second, every single year is different, and it is different on every place on the earth. So we might have a good harvest in the California, vineyards. We have a bad harvest in southern Germany. We have a good harvest in Chile. We have a bad harvest in Australia, throughout the globe. So on one hand, we have to respect nature as of the supply and as of the harvest we get. On the other hand, we have to prepare. We have to prepare, for example, with red wines. We release red wines a year after the harvest, usually. So I have to prepare for a small harvest. And whenever I have a good harvest and good quality, I want to make sure to have more wine in the cellar from that harvest. If I can prepare, I would do that, right? So we, as business leaders in that industry, together with our experts, with our winemakers, with our marketing team, so we have to respect nature, as I said, one hand, and on the other hand, we have to be precise in terms of respecting that and put an extra effort in terms of marketing, in terms of supply chain. And obviously, it's industry expertise, as in every industry.
Now, one of your quotes is leadership in wine is about balancing the timeless with the timely. Can you share an example of where you had to strike that balance between tradition and innovation?
We do not want to hold back innovation, not at all. But sometimes we have to build innovation on tradition. And I'm also referring to brand building. And most of the historically built brands are wineries where in their let's say in their legacy was built on family tradition. So okay, how do you balance that? You have family tradition, you have the nature aspect, and then you have a fast market. People want bubbles, for example. People want lower alcohol. But if it wasn't your legacy, you have to really be careful to balance and not walk away from your honest heritage, right? There's a very sensitive point. If you go aggressive in marketing and you as a leader or a family owner / leader, grab your brand, grab your company and push it to the utmost to innovation, you might lose your whole honest background.
Now, I'd like to turn to managing teams. Having led organizations across Europe and Africa and the US, how do you build trust and empower local teams without micromanaging?
Well, that's a very relevant question. It's the matter. My experience. It's all about a certain amount of trust in the beginning, and more trust whenever you have built a team. You work for a longer time with staff, and it refers to all the management levels. Trust, and to give trust the first extent, whenever you set out a new task, is the highest motivation that you can give. And as we all are humans with a background, and if you build a team, you know who the people are that you have in the team and the individuals. Let's say you have someone, a winemaker that has been trained in Chile. There's no question that this winemaker has a specific knowledge about certain grape varieties. So you can keep that in mind. And if the situation comes up that you want to build like a product that refers to a more global taste profile, why shouldn't I trust that winemaker? Why shouldn't I bring him into the team and give him all the trust and let him do the job and interfere as little as possible, just to the lowest extent. So trust is my number one.
And looking back, what was a pivotal leadership lesson that you learned early in your career that still guides you today?
Well, my biggest experience was when we set up a South African wine brand, and that was in the early 2000s. And my key learning was that, let's say, the empathy and the passion towards starting that project and all the way through the early stages of that company foundation when we set up the winery was much more important than any authority and any organizational decision in setting up rules, layers of leadership, the staff, how we put up the staff. I remember the first couple of years we were driven by the idea we bring out a South African brand that stands for South Africa. We roll it out to the world. And we were so passionate about it. I had applications, blind applications of salespeople in the industry that wanted to join us because they heard about our team. And we had almost like we had no layers in our organization. It was me and a bunch of colleagues. We were about 10 of us, and we had our colleagues in South Africa, and that was it. And all of us, we were on the same stream, so to speak. That was one of my early learnings when we in setting up like an international business, because it's so we were so remote, right? We had internet in the 2000, early 2000. We had it. We had emails, right? We had Skype, right? But it was different than today. We use internet more often. We have video calls and all of that. However, at that time, it was so much more important that we had that trust layer and that empathy and the passion. I couldn't control all. When I was in the US and then South Africa had a time zone 9 hours, 8 hours back. I could call, and I could set up like a video call quickly, but I couldn't be there all the time, obviously. So again, empathy beats authority. That's my major message here.
I love that. Empathy beats authority. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to explore how Marian has navigated disruption and led through times of uncertainty. Don't go anywhere. We'd love for you to be a part of the Expressions of Leadership community. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. And we're back on Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, continuing my conversation with international wine industry leader, Marian Kopp. Marian, the wine industry, like many others, has faced disruptions from global crises to shifting trade regulations. How have you led teams and brands through these uncertain times?
Yeah, we had times when there was a constant stream upwards, like when we had the global markets were receptive towards international wine sales, and I mean like saying selling South African wines to the U.S. market, U.S. wine selling to Europe, crisscross. That's much easier time than the times when we had the COVID pandemic, when we had to deal with consumers that stayed home more, that were respectful to themselves. And then we had the times over the last couple of years when we had the economic crisis. We had that already in 2008, 2009, the financial crisis. So whenever this kicks in, it hits us as well in the wine industry. Wine as a product has its specific issues, negative and positive. The positive side, wine relates to relaxation, intimate moments where consumers care of themselves. And then there's times when consumers, more or less the last 3-4 years, especially in Europe with the war in Ukraine, people are more sensitive. People respect more in terms of what can be harmful. Can I save money? Everything got more expensive. So this is the sides that we have experienced. And in the early days, now I'm going back to the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, when we didn't have social media, when marketing budgets to be effective needed to be big. I mean, we're talking at least 6 or 7 digits in dollars or euros to set up a campaign. There was no option. We didn't have viral opportunities and setting grassroots campaigns. So our leadership decisions in terms of marketing and sales management were risky. Either you don't spend or almost nothing, so nothing comes out of it, or you go for TV commercials or radio commercials and you start with a couple of 100,000, right? So this has changed. we can start smaller campaigns. We can go for direct sales. We can over the times we all set up our online stores. Most markets in the world, fortunately, are liberal markets. So we could start our sales from the winery direct, right? So there's opportunities. I went back and forth, I know, but I think I hope I could make clear that these different times needed special management decisions.
And what role does resilience play in your leadership style? And how do you instill that in others?
Well, resilience is something, as I mentioned it before, in challenging times, if you are like thin-lined and have let's say you're not resilient, so you're shocked more or less by every new threat that kicks in. It might be a small harvest. It might be that you have price pressures because some of your largest retailers have themselves their problems. Then you act, or you might act in a hectic, negative way. Doesn't do well to your organization. So resilience is not a matter, I don't want to interpret it in terms of that I say resilience means always recline and take your time and take more time. That's not what, in my terms, resilience needs to be interpreted with or executed through. Resilience means that you listen, that you think twice, and that you give respect to your organization whenever they are hit hard by any circumstance that we have in our business life, right? So it is balancing the trust in we will find a solution, lay out a path, or give the vision. That is resilience. Give a vision that there will be a path, and the best would be if we figure it out together. That's resilience in my understanding. Find a path together, and you as an industry leader should be able to lay to do the first step on that path, but be able to also adjust. The next step might want you turn into a little bit to another direction. So avoid being hectic. Being hectic, in my understanding, quickly relates to setting up like a fear or like a threat to the organization, right? So I hope I could lay it out good enough. Sometimes the path is gravel, and it's not nice asphalt, and it's not nicely laid out, right? Maybe it's a dirt path, but if we pick the right shoes and we start to walk, yeah, maybe that could be like an expression of resilience. If we have rough times, let's take more protective shoes when starting to walk.
Such a great analogy. And in an industry where results can take years to show, as we've talked about earlier, how do you keep teams motivated and celebrate small wins along the way?
Oh yeah, that's something that we need it in terms of giving a vision and celebrate. If we have a vision like a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, the vision can help itself as if it's an understandable vision, which is not like a fairy tale that would never come true. But in between, we should celebrate our small successes towards, looking at that vision and setting up all the efforts and putting up the right investments, putting a lot of work hours into the thrive to arrive at that visionary point. But in between, let us celebrate small steps. If we invent a new brand and we want to have it distributed in 30, 40, 50 countries in the world, let's celebrate the first case to go to a foreign market. Then let's celebrate if we have 3 markets in North America, right? Let's go for that step by step, but be respectful to all the effort that went into that small success.
And how do you celebrate with your teams?
Oh, we do it. Well, that's a good thing. We don't need wine all the time, but let's say we have 2 wine bars here ourselves, adjacent to the winery, where we have our professional tastings. Sometimes we just in the later afternoon, we turn up the music. We have a coffee at the espresso machine, and we have the premises, right? We can gather and have the premises to cheer, and it doesn't have to be wine all the time. However, it can be. So it's a matter of coming together and just having the right moment. It's not set in, it's more or less the situation that we are a hospitality industry. So most of us, right? Most of us with their own setup have opportunities. They have a room, they have a bar, some have restaurants. They can invite a few people and come together. Obviously, if we do it online, we can cheer, we can have all of our staff worldwide just raise a glass, and it's a symbolic thing, right? But to do it together and have a little glass of bubbles always helps.
Sounds fun to me. Well, let's pause briefly, and after the break, we'll talk about what it means to lead across cultures and mentor the next generation of leaders. True transformation starts from within. The Forward Project partners with organizations to create meaningful culture shifts and develop leaders who inspire real change. If your team is ready to move forward with purpose, visit www.theforwardproject.co. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today I'm talking with Marian Kopp about leadership in the international wine and FMCG industry. Now, Marian, you've said that true leadership is not about control, but about creating trust across borders, cultures, and markets. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I was amazed by the South African team's resilience. They were just wonderful in terms of a tight set in their teams. They had trust, right? And it was so helpful to see that and to experience that. And on the other hand, my European teams during that time, they were all about precision. We want to do it right. We want to do it perfect. On the American side, we had more the spontaneous and pragmatic view to address a market and to set up and to fund our company, right? So, and if we look at these cultural differences, there is an opportunity if we talk more like industries or companies and leaders that have to deal with certain cultural areas of this world, there's an option to combine that. And it was wonderful because when we did our international sales conferences for our brand, Golden Khan at that time, I tried to bring parts of the teams together and introduce their biggest team effort and what they had seen as their team success. So the South Africans, they came up with the first celebration and how they celebrated the first harvest. And when the fermentation went through and we had a great wine, we had a great Sauvignon Blanc, and they cheered that vintage so much and that harvest. And it kind of, they were clapping and dancing. And it was like it was a whole energetic drive into the whole team. The Europeans, they came up with an Excel sheet saying, hey, we had been in this and this and this market. We had the first interest here and here and here. They did the exact world model where they pinpointed like the successes, right? That was amazing. Like we had almost like two sides of the medal, right? And you need both. You definitely need both.
And what cultural differences in leadership have stood out to you in your global career?
I've experienced quite a few almost like clashes when through generations and through different cultures, we have had situations in teams where, especially in our industry, in wine, had business leaders that stemmed from very from companies and a leadership culture that relied on hierarchy, right? They were so related to the setup of the hierarchy, and that clashed whenever we had younger teams, and we had teams, especially as we had it in from South Africa, where the industry is much younger. The team members were younger. That clashed when hierarchy levels had to talk. Decisions had to be taken through the hierarchy, versus a flat hierarchy. There's no hierarchy. Everybody talked to everybody else, and we had very fast outcome in terms of especially when we did brainstorming. The brainstorming on flat hierarchy levels was much more effective than if I had to grab the layers and they had to decide to what layer of the hierarchy do I talk to, right? In Europe, we have both. We have an attitude, and I'm so happy that, especially in Germany, we're over that. We are reducing hierarchy levels. We want more agile teams. We're getting there, but it wasn't there till, let's say, over the last 20 years. It developed a lot, but before, when I started in the early 90s, we are so stuck in hierarchy. So that's something I don't want to establish in terms of leadership needs no hierarchy. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying we have to be more agile, and we have to adopt other cultural views in terms of how do we build teams and how we respect people. And I'm very happy that Europe walks into that direction.
Now, with your experience mentoring and advising over the years, what do you see as the biggest challenge for the next generation of leaders in the wine industry?
I think it is that challenge. How do we balance tech and the tech options towards traditional roots that built our successes? It's not only a marketing issue in terms of being sensitive. How fast can I stretch a brand or shift a brand towards younger audiences or a different target group? It's also related to the organization in my company. Most of our colleagues in the wine industry are not multi-country corporations. Most of us in the world have their domestic market as the number one market. They're very regional. And that means the regional foundation can be seen as stable on one hand. We have to respect where our customers are. It's more stable. However, the consumer's access, let's walk to the next supermarket, go to a supermarket, and the average supermarket in Germany has between 500 and 1,000 different SKUs of wine. The average supermarket, 1,000. So your competition is right there. That wasn't the case a couple of decades ago. So that's something we have to relate to in terms of what the next generation has to deal with. And one specific term, as we're talking FMCG and distribution here, and I think it's a worldwide situation that through the supply chain, wholesalers and retailers that have many, many more options to dig into their assortment and your portfolio and change it. They do it much faster than in the past. When you had a listing, as we say it, that means you are listed and you in a distributor's book, or you were set in a wine shelf of a supermarket. 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was more like it was clear you're there at least for a couple of years. And you were allowed to restock, right? That has changed. Supply chain management, all the automated systems in supply chain allows, and obviously have to respect this, wholesalers and retailers, they must address the market faster. And we in the wine industry, as leaders, sometimes we forget that. We think that as our product is so much related to tradition, all the consumers and also our supply chain, our wholesalers and our supermarkets, they stick with us, they stay with us, they love us. But hey, be careful. Our next generation and us right now, we already can feel that push of options in terms of there's so many other new colleagues that want to kick into that market. And on the other hand, retailers, wholesalers, they pull out products that they don't like, right? There's a lot of stream. And I think our next generation has to deal with it much more than we do right now. But there's tools. Again, we have tech support also in supply chain, and we can deal with that. We can build up expertise, logistics companies, all of that. We can do that. But again, it's not the tradition. It's not where we come from. So let's wake up right now.
And what leadership skill in particular would you say they're going to need to lean in on in order to face these challenges?
Yeah, it is. I think it is to divide between like an ad hoc demanding situation through the supply chain, where if you don't respond to a supply chain demand, you're lost. That's one side. And on the other side, do not aggressively overrule marketing laws in terms of building a brand, building trust with your consumer, build loyalty, and shift whenever there's if you experience some shift in consumer demand, be very sensitive towards that, but not just pull off a label because you get the information. People love red on wine labels, right? Pull off your label because it's been green for generations. Just pull it off and put red on. Better don't do that. Better find a solution to blend in some green, right? Maybe that's the solution. Be careful of that. However, other situation, supply chain hiccup. Your best retailer tells you you cannot stock 5 of your SKUs. You have to decide on the top 3. Don't discuss for months and weeks to hold on. Don't interfere all the time. I need my 5 SKUs. No, go pick the top 3 and make them better and make more business with your 3 SKUs. Let him focus on the 3 and you make more business instead of holding on to the past, right? I hope I was clear enough, these 2 examples.
So it sounds like adaptability and also decisiveness.
Oh, yes, exactly. You put it right there.
We'll be back in just a moment to continue this inspiring conversation with Marian Kopp. Stay with us. Leadership isn't just about strategy, it's about people. The Forward Project helps organizations cultivate strong, adaptable leaders who create thriving workplace cultures. If you're ready to invest in your leadership team, visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn how. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, here with Marian Kopp. Let's dive back in. Marian, the global wine and FMCG industries are shaped by shifting trade regulations, evolving consumer behavior, as you talked about, and rapid digital transformation. Which of these trends do you think will most define the next decade?
I think it's the access to information in every situation and every moment, to have global access to everything that our industry knows, more or less. In terms of, if I'm a consumer and I'm ready to decide on a purchase, ready to decide which wine will I serve at my next birthday party. It might take me only 5 seconds if I rely on the information that our tech world gives us. But that answer, where does that come from? So how do we influence in terms of suppliers the availability of information? How do I put our marketing push into the world? And part of that I cannot influence. I cannot. We don't have the money. We are mid-sized companies. We don't have the money, but we can still be intelligent. We can be smart in addressing the markets and making ourselves visible. And it's a matter of be on the spot, or be on that all the time, constantly try to understand and follow through. How do the algorithms work? What do I have to put in? What label shows well on a screen of a cell phone? Because that might be my first purchase contact. Before purchase, if it's an online purchase, it's only that little screen that I have on my device, right? It's different from an embossed bottle and from an expensive label that might, shine, but it might not shine on a small smartphone screen. So here's ins and outs in terms of marketing, in terms of sales channels. And this is challenges for all of us. We have to be more receptive and more on alert towards changes in the tech world. In our reality, it's reality. Technology is reality much more than before. And at the end, logistics, supply chain is also important, but it's a follow through. Here, we shouldn't make mistakes, but the most intelligent, or let's say the most challenging thing and issue would be how to address basically the availability of information in the world of information that we live in.
And sustainability is a major concern in the agricultural world. How do you see sustainability influencing leadership decisions in wine?
I think, it's not a side subject anymore. It's core. Sustainability is the ground. It's the base of everything, especially in a product that relates to a natural cycle in the world. In my view, all the decisions that we make as industry leaders have to be in respect of the next generation. And so sustainability is core. A generation that is full steam in the business, and knock on wood, fortunately, I will be for the next 1 or 2 decades, right? But so many of my business decisions relate to the next and the next after the next generation. And especially as we have to do with plants and planting a vineyard. Let's take that example. Planting a vineyard today. It has to hold in terms of give harvest for the next 25 to 35 years. So you can tell when I take a business decision right now with my farmers, with my cooperative members, and we discuss grape varieties to plant. Should we plant more fungus-resistant grape varieties that needs less, plant protection, less chemical protection, right? That's something that we address, for example. And that's a decision that will go way beyond my personal time as an industry leader. I will be a consumer, hopefully 25 years ahead, right? But I think that's an example. So sustainability in terms of business decision, vineyards, planting a vineyard, you're right there. We're talking 30 years.
Mm-hmm. What role do you think international collaboration will play in shaping the next era of wine leadership?
Well, yeah, in terms of no single area, no single country can shape all the future. We can't change as a single area. We cannot change the climate changes. We cannot do that. We have to look beyond. We cannot rely on, if we solve a supply chain problem, that it's solved worldwide. It's a matter of if we do it right, if we collaborate beyond borders, if we do it right, it can be the breakthrough in terms of a big success. And it needs the understanding, the full mindset that us alone, even though if we have a focus market here or there, but if we look beyond where our consumers could be in the next generation, we have to be open and consider the world. Right? It's a very. I'm relating to it. I think it's a very political standpoint, but I'm on it. I'm honest with it. My business decisions, most of the business decisions, 90% the German market. But we have so much influence. Our consumers that travel the world, they adopt, right? They adopt taste profiles. They adopt profiles of label designs, of calligraphy, right? So even though my domestic market is important, the cross-border thinking in terms of international thinking is much more important. Our world is international. So that's my clear statement here.
And what excites you most about the opportunities ahead for leaders in this industry?
Oh, it's that matter of heritage that we have in the wine, and our products is so much about heritage, founded so many decades ago, and then we have that digital native audience that kicks in, and that looks different towards heritage and tradition. Because the digital world is sometimes so non-present. The viral is so non-authentic. You cannot hold on to it. Sometimes in my view, there's consumers that just thrive to hold on to some tradition and want to experience it. Maybe wine can give that, right? That link to to set back, to recline, with all the hammering information that kicks in all the time. Maybe we can be one of the products, one of the joyful, we can help that to bring up those joyful moments in life.
Definitely a joyful product for me. We'll take one last short break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up with Marian's vision for the future, the legacy he hopes to leave, and even a little whimsy. You won't want to miss it. By partnering with Expressions of Leadership, you'll reach an audience of professionals passionate about leadership and growth. For sponsorship opportunities, please contact us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, joined by special guest Marian Kopp. Marian, looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of the wine industry, especially as consumer habits and technology and sustainability evolve?
My vision is that we help to build a more sustainable, a more transparent environment. Our product can be sustainable. Our vineyards can be brought up to be more sustainable. We want more transparency with where we come from, where our products come from. This is a wonderful layer, and we can be honest in terms of our product, where it comes from, and we want to be more inclusive in terms of bringing different consumer groups from wherever they come from, but we can try to connect them with our product, with our approach to supply our brand, our wines that have that heritage. And if they are sustainable, and if we can talk about it, and if we can be transparent again with it, then we have a real option in this world to be different and to be better. In my view, tech can amplify the human craft rather than completely replace it. So yes, work with tech, have it amplify our marketing work, our supply chain work, but what we want to bring out as a passionate statement whenever we have a chance to interact with consumers, then again, sustainability, transparency, and inclusiveness. I think important issues in this world to be right now, but also to come.
And when you think about your own leadership journey, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
Well, one is in terms of be resilient. It's a tough call here, but I'm saying be comfortable with discomfort ever so often. In terms of, if you make a business mistake, if it doesn't ruin the company, and most of the days we do mistakes, and it doesn't right now ruin our whole company, right? So you make a mistake and respect it. Okay, that was a mistake. Try to be open with it. Well, you haven't tell to your whole supply chain, but with your team, share it and get right on to the understanding, okay, what is the lesson learned? And that relates to an earlier statement in terms of leadership advice or how to build resilient teams, build trust on that. So again, be comfortable with ever so often discomfort in terms of maybe a wrong decision, you laid out a wrong path, and you have to just step back a little bit And I think that's something that I have experienced in the earlier days of my career. We wanted to hide whenever a wrong decision was there. I tried to be circumvent whatever bringing that up, circumvent it completely, right? I hope I can stay with that I learned my own lesson. Is better to talk about it, right? Saying, okay, I felt uncomfortable because the situation wasn't good, but I feel comfortable understanding what the learning is. And here we go, ready for the next step with motivation and with empathy.
Well, before we move into our closing questions, how can listeners learn more about you, your work, and the organization that you're leading today?
So I think the easiest is to pick and to connect through LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect, and I share some of my business experience there. And I'm quite happy. I'm in a number of industry groups on LinkedIn, and I think it's a platform that can be very helpful, actually.
Well, now it's time for our wisdom and whimsy segment of the show, where we get to ask our guest one advice question and one fun question. Let's start with the advice question. What advice would you give to younger professionals who want to step into leadership roles, not just in wine, but in any global industry?
Bring it to one sentence. Impact counts much more than job titles. Saying if you are passionate about a project, about an idea, and be sensitive where to shout it out, but shout it out and rock, basically, rock the team, rock your colleagues. It helped me in the past. Maybe I didn't use it enough. And it's not about being aggressive and be on the front of everybody all the time, but passion about something and to thrive, to perform, and to thrive. If you have an idea, if you have a consumer idea, if you have a taste profile idea, if you have a wonderful wine as a winemaker, and you release it, you show it to a few people, and you come back to your company saying, let's go for it. Just bring it on. Bring it on.
And now for the fun question. If you could share a glass of wine with any historical leader, who would it be and why?
Well, related to my South African experience, by far it would be Nelson Mandela. His resilience over the time when he wasn't free is beyond a human capacity or a human whatever we can do. But next step, his ability to unite, bring people together, and spread joy it's timeless.
Well, Marian, I appreciate you joining us on Expressions of Leadership. Your path shows us how leadership can honor tradition while also embracing innovation and creating clarity in an ever-changing world. Thank you for sharing that perspective with us today.
Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Expressions of Leadership. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, share the episode, and leave us a review. Until next time, I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, reminding you that leadership is about creating clarity, trust, and vision, even in the most complex environments. If you haven't done so already, make sure to click on that follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have a guest you'd like us to interview? Questions, ideas, or just want to say hello? You can reach us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com or connect with us on Instagram or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks to our amazing team behind the scenes for making this podcast possible, including our sound engineer, Graham Palmer, and my chief encourager and advisor, Jeremiah Higgins.